We'll take a few moments here today to address a topic I've already spoken about once before in another video. That topic being the Trayvon Martin shooting and the George Zimmerman issue. Now, like I say, I addressed this in a video earlier, but it's got to where there's like 800 something comments now, and I don't get notification of all the comments, so I haven't been able to keep up with it. I've spent enough of my time just deleting comments of people who come on and just say racist, horrible things. So I want to take this time to address the topic once more, kind of clarify my opinion and address some of the things that have come up. Now, I've tried to film this like 3 times in a one video format, and it's just getting too long and too rambling, so I'm going to have to break it into 2 videos. So this is going to be part 1 of the video, and in part 1 I want to deal with what my opinion is, any new evidence, any real evidence, stuff that we do have that we can look at, stuff that we don't have, some misconceptions people have, you know, just what is really evidence and what isn't. Now, like I stated in my first video, I think George Zimmerman should face manslaughter charges. He made some mistakes that led to the death of an innocent person, and he needs to face the charges. He needs to stand in a court of law and let the evidence be presented against him. If that evidence proves him guilty, he needs to face the consequences of his actions. If the evidence cannot prove him guilty, well, he needs to be found innocent, because the presumption of innocence would win out over, circumstantial evidence. But he still needs to face those charges. Now, people tell me, well, you should take your first video down now that the new evidence has come out. Well, there has been no new evidence. I don't know where people are getting this idea. They see an enhanced photo that means nothing on TV. They think that's new evidence. In fact, that goes the other way around. This guy supposedly just had a head wound 15 minutes ago. He doesn't have a bandage on it. It's not very likely that that's any kind of a serious head wound if he doesn't even have a bandage on it. It would be no more than a scratch, because head wounds bleed for a lot. Trust me, I know. So that's not new evidence. Those enhanced photos are worthless. They don't even hold up in the court of law, because everyone knows the algorithm. Anyone that's a professional knows those algorithms that form those. All they do is they guess. So they can make something out of nothing. So that's not new evidence. In fact, a lot of the evidence that came out at first, a lot of people were talking about, like witnesses that saw Martin beating Zimmerman on the concrete. Apparently that never happened. There's no one on record right now saying, there's no public information available that anyone saw that. All the people on record state that they did not see the fight before the gunshot. All they saw was the aftermath of the gunshot. So there's no witnesses that saw what happened. Contrary to what you hear all over the internet about people witnessing Martin delivering this brutal beatdown to Zimmerman. There's no witnesses that it happened, and there's no physical evidence on Martin that there was ever a brutal beatdown at all. Maybe a punch in the face and a knocked on your ass, but nothing of a brutal beatdown. So there's no new evidence there. Just all this stuff, these fake pictures of Trayvon Martin that are coming out, that people are trying to use as evidence that Trayvon Martin was somehow a threat. We know Trayvon Martin was doing nothing wrong that night. We know Trayvon Martin had reason to be there. We know Trayvon Martin just went to the store, got a pack of Skittles, an iced tea, and was talking to his girlfriend while walking back to his dad's, or his dad's girlfriend's, whoever's home it was, but he had right to be there. So those are the things we know. This false evidence, all this speculation and conjecture, and reports like one report that said that a woman said she heard Zimmerman screaming for help. She says she never said that. The police have redacted that she said that. They said, oh, well, okay, maybe she didn't say that exactly. So there's not even evidence that it was Zimmerman screaming. In fact, the evidence points contrary to being Zimmerman. All the voice recording analysts I've seen done point to more likely that it was someone else other than Zimmerman. Now, they're inconclusive because they don't have a good sample of Martin's voice, so they're inconclusive. A lot of people want to latch onto that inconclusive instead of paying attention to the fact that it probably wasn't Zimmerman. So when you look at all that, there's not really a whole lot of new evidence. So the fact there's no new evidence, there's just a lot of speculation, a lot of making something out of nothing. So what we have to deal with is we have to deal with what we know for a fact happened. So here's what we know happened, long and short of it. We know Trayvon Martin was doing nothing wrong. He was an innocent person. Doesn't matter what you care about, the way he looks, the way he dresses, or even if he got suspended from school for having a joint. That's irrelevant to the fact that he was doing nothing wrong that evening when he was singled out as a threat by George Zimmerman. So we know George Zimmerman singled Trayvon Martin out. Whatever his motivation was for doing that, I don't know. I don't even want to speculate. I don't care. A lot of people want to make this about race. I don't want to make this about race. And I've been accused by some people saying, oh, the only reason you don't want to make it about race is because you're a white guy. Well, no, the reason I don't want to make it about race is because you're muddying the waters. I think the facts of the case alone stand enough against Zimmerman that later in a court you can start speculating about what his motivation was. Now let's just deal with the reality of what we know happened. That way we don't muddy the waters and we don't create allies around Zimmerman that shouldn't be there simply because they want to fight the racism charge. So I don't want to make it a racially charged issue. I just want to deal with the reality of what happened. So what we know happened is he singled out an innocent person. He then decided to follow this innocent person. And he did call the police. That's the one good thing he did. So he singled him out. He followed him. Those are mistakes on Zimmerman's part. This person was doing nothing wrong. He incorrectly identified him as a threat. So he is in the wrong at this point. Now, so far he hasn't done anything so bad that it's unforgivable. He's just made a couple mistakes. Then it gets really bad. He decides, when he says this person is getting away, the person's trying to evade him, blah, 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 he loses sight of him. So he decides he needs to get out and go after this person on foot. This is where he went down a slope that he couldn't cut, that caused it to be a situation that got out of hand. This is where he made his biggest error, in my opinion. Getting out of that car knowing he was armed was the biggest mistake he could make. Going to confront someone knowing he was armed, especially since he was in the wrong and the person really wasn't doing anything wrong, there's where he fell down. I've always said you don't do anything armed that you wouldn't do unarmed, but it goes the other way around too. Sometimes you don't do things armed that you would do unarmed. Like I might get into a fist fight with someone if I'm unarmed. If I'm armed, if someone says something to me, I'm going to ignore them. Because I know I have on my person the ability to take that conflict to a level that I don't want it to go to, whether it's my fault or theirs. I just don't want to deal with it, period. So I'm going to avoid that fight. I'm going to turn around and walk away. Zimmerman chose not to do that. He chose to actively seek a situation knowing he was armed with deadly force. So there, from that point forward, all the burden is on Zimmerman because he made a series of bad decisions. Now, we don't know what happened after he went after him on foot, because there's no witnesses of what happened. There's only witnesses from the gunshot on. So all we know is he went after him on foot, a couple minutes passed, he shoots Trayvon Martin. Now, I do believe Trayvon Martin knocked him on his ass. I have no doubt about that. But I believe Trayvon Martin may have been justified in doing so. So we know he singled him out, followed him, then pursued him on foot, then shot him. Those are the things we know. That alone is enough for him to face manslaughter charges. Then there's probably more information we don't know. So the fact that he followed someone, then shot them, the burden's not on him to be innocent now. He's proven that he created a situation and then killed someone. So he's guilty of killing someone. So now he has to prove that in that tiny window of things that we don't know what happened, that he somehow became justified in killing Trayvon Martin. And I don't really think that's going to happen. Now, before we even talk about what could happen that he could be justified in killing Trayvon Martin, I want to address this misconception that people have that he had the right to follow, pursue, stop, question, detain someone who wasn't doing anything wrong. No, he does not have that right. I have so many people on here saying, I've got a right to stop someone and ask them questions if they're in my neighborhood if I want to. No, you do not. You do not have the right to harass another citizen. Your rights end where theirs begin. So you do not have that right. In fact, in a lot of states, what Martin did would be considered menacing, and what Zimmerman did would have been considered menacing, and Trayvon Martin would have had the right to defend himself. So that whole thing about, oh, I have the right to stop someone and ask them questions, no, you don't. You're not a law enforcement officer. I've never seen so many cop wannabes in my life that think there's some sort of, that they've been granted some sort of right by some divine spaghetti monster in the sky to act as judge, jury, executioner, and law enforcement official in their neighborhood just because they think they have that right. You don't. So get that out of your mind. When you start harassing someone else, if you're wrong and they weren't doing what you're thinking they're doing, you're in the wrong completely. It's like when you commit, a lot of people like to say, well, I can do a citizen arrest. Well, go ahead, do a citizen's arrest. And if that person turns out that they were clearly guilty of what they were doing, you might get away with it. But if it turns out you took the wrong person down, that citizen arrest becomes kidnapping, harassment, and assault. And you're the criminal. So that's one thing you need to keep in mind, these people that think they have the right somehow to detain and question someone. You just don't. So now we know, we talked about what did happen. We've talked about Zimmerman doesn't have the right to confront Martin at all. And we've talked about he has to justify in that short window of time, is there a reason why he was justified in doing what he was doing? There was only one reason I can think that he could justify that is if he had right to fear for his well-being, he had the right to fear that he was in mortal danger of serious injury. I think that's going to be a tough fight, and I'll tell you why in the next video.